السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. في البداية حبيت أشكر السلطنة على حسن الاستضافة والإقامة. بدي بجلستنا الثانية بعنوان بيانات التواصل الاجتماعي والمواقع الالكترونية. مثل ما تعرفون المواقع الإلكترونية تتميز بوفرة في البيانات سواء من خلال المعاملات والخدمات التجارية والاقتصادية وغيرها، ودائما الأجهزة الإحصائية الوطنية تسعى للاستفادة من هذه البيانات واستخدامها لإنتاج إحصاءات مثل إحصاءات الضرائب وأسعار المستهلكين والمنتجين وغيرها. وكذلك الحال بالنسبة حق شبكات التواصل الاجتماعي اللي فيها بيانات متكونة من عبارة عن بيانات لتبادل الحوار ووجهات النظر، واللي لها تأثير مباشر وغير مباشر على صنع القرار، وبيانات الدفع الإلكتروني وبطاقات الائتمان اللي ممكن أن هي تنتج مؤشرات إحصائية عن القوى الشرائية ومعدلات استهلاك الأسر والفرد، ومؤشرات اقتصادية أخرى تستفيد منها المراكز الإحصائية والمعلوماتية. نبتدئ الجلسة بالورقة الأساسية تحت عنوان الذكاء الاصطناعي للاستفادة من بيانات الشبكات العالمية للمعلومات ووسائل التواصل الاجتماعي. قدمها السيد فارون من شركة بهوان سايبرتك الإمارات. Please, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone. My name is Varun Khandelwal and I'm humbled and honored to talk to you guys. It has been a great session. I have been hearing all others and it's pretty interesting on how we are talking about data. We are really talking about the data in government, right? So I personally work a lot with government agencies across Middle East, and I have in past worked with a lot of government agencies in US and in Asia. So today's discussion will, I'll primarily talk about web scraping data and social media data. It's pretty interesting how these days when I visit my customers, government customers, though everyone is talking about data, the thing they'll tell is we are not using data enough for decision making. That's the common kind of a theme which I hear from a lot of my customers out there, right? So that, and I'll try to address a part of it through this web data and social media data, because as statisticians, we are great at applying algorithms, applying models, applying statistics on data. But when we talk about gathering different kind of data, variety of data, obviously we have a lot of survey data, but taking it to a different level of web and social data makes add more meanings to the analysis what we do, right? And in that entire journey, if we see that entire journey of taking that data and using it or analyzing it, there are three primary parts that I like to break that entire journey in, which is connect. Connect is nothing but ability to get that web data or the machine data or the internet data or the social media data. We should have the ability to connect to this kind of variety of data, different data sources with very ease. That's the first part, connectivity. Once the data is connected, it's very important that we store it in a manner that it's properly governed, it's properly accessible, the security is in place. It's meaningful, right? Because not all the social media data or the web data you will get is the correct data. So the correctness of the data is also very important. And that's why getting the data and unifying it is very important. Once you have done the unification of data, it's important that you do the analysis on it. And there are different kind of analysis you can do. You can primarily do descriptive analytics, predictive analytics. There are different ways in which you can basically make use of that data for different purposes. Now, I'll try to go into each of this part in very brief and explain in detail, right, what we mean by basically those different components. So when we talk about connect, it's basically about, so when we talk about the web scraping data, right, there is a lot of data available on web which is out there to be used by statisticians for a lot of price predictions, for a lot of statistical purposes, right? For example, there is a lot of commodity prices available out there on the retail websites, online retail websites, which can be used to find out whether how is the inflation doing over the period of time. Similarly, there is a lot of housing data available. What prices the houses are being sold. what is the construction going on. So there are different kind of data which is available out there on internet, which can be used along with the old set of data which we already have been using, right? And when we say about this data available on web, how to get it, because it's not easy to get the data always. So there are a few concepts of web scraping where you can basically automate the whole process of taking the data from a particular website and using it for your statistical purpose. So when we talk about web scraping, there are three primary steps to it. One is basically you have to crawl the entire website which you are interested in. You have to basically scrape it. You have to get a meaningful information. Just to give you an example, for example, if you're looking at the prices of the commodity, you have to get that information from that website. Once you have got that price of a particular commodity, you have to map it to your census data, right? You might have your own definition of that product or the commodity, and you have to map it to your data set so that it can be seamlessly used for that statistical purpose. Now, this is the three-step process, but obviously there are different ways in which you can do. There is different ways in which this entire process is automated, and we actually help customers to do all of these things very seamlessly. The trends which we are basically seeing is because of this aggregator concept where one aggregator will show the prices from multiple places, we are seeing a lot of APIs being used to basically consume this kind of data. So it's not always about web crawling. A lot of the data these days are available through APIs, which we can consume directly, rather than going through the website and doing the crawling and the scraping part of it. And obviously there are many use cases, as I was saying, right? Be it for inflation, be it for house price index, be it for the construction, new construction, how is the economy going on. You can really use it for different kind of use cases within your statistical analysis purpose. So this is all about the web data, right? The next interesting part is social media data. Again, the thing which we hear from our customers is traditionally it has been very challenging for organizations, government organizations, to get feedback from the customers or their users, end users, which are none but the public in general, right? So to get that feedback, it has been challenging, but because of the social media, it has become much more easier because people these days tweet or put their post on social media very easily, and they give you the feedback about what they like or what they don't like about your policies, right? So it's pretty easy to get that social media data flavor to make or to use it for your decision-making purpose. So how do you basically get this data, right? Getting the social media data, for example, if you are in Twitter or in Facebook, you primarily start by looking at what keywords you are interested in. And I'll talk about these keywords in a different angle also. So for example, if you are interested in some tax reform you are bringing in, and you are putting it on public, and then you are trying to monitor for those specific keywords what the public response in general is, right? So you start by identifying those keywords, getting the data of those specific keywords, and basically then you need to store that data in some form so that it's easy for you to do the analysis. I've mentioned there about the data in structure format, but typically the feedback data or the review data is never in structure. It's always a plain text which you have to basically use later on with your natural language processing things, which I'll go next after this. But it's basically, if you see over there, it's nothing but the entire tweet or the message itself gets saved as a text message. No, it's not like a complete structured data. Once you have the data and you are storing it, you have to make sure that obviously it is well governed. There is a proper security in place on who can access that data, because some of this data is public information. It's a private information as well as public information. So you really want to be sure that this data is being kept very well. The other challenge is you need to process this data, because a lot of the social media data or the data which is coming from the internet is not readily used. Like there are proxy users who basically post just to increase or make positive vibes on the internet, right? So you have to be careful and basically clear them out rather than using it for your analysis purpose. So there is a step of pre-processing, there is a step of cleansing that goes when you are basically collecting that data and using it for your analysis purpose. That's why this unification is equally important as connecting to the data. Once you have connected the data, the next is basically taking actions on it, making it useful. And that's where you can do a lot of things. One is descriptive analytics, where you are building graphs, KPI charts about what are the different statistical things going on. For example, who is tweeting about what? If I'm going to announce a policy, what is in general the sentiment around the public about that particular policy? How many people are tweeting about it, or how many people are commenting about it? That's more about the descriptive part. The next is to go beyond just the KPI and take the meaning out of the post or the messages that people are posting. So it's all about sentiment analysis, whether the sentiment is positive or not. And maybe once you know whether the sentiment is positive or not, you want to go one more level down and see what things they are positive about or what things they are not positive about. So that's the area of topic modeling, where you basically go deep into the message itself and try to identify which topic. For example, are they happy with the easiness of the entire process of the new policy? Are they happy about it? Or are they complaining about the ease of use of the new policy? So you have to go into the topic and find out if the sentiment is positive, what is leading it to be positive and what is leading it to be negative. So that's another interesting part. And one of the analyses these days, what we have done with some of the recent things we have done is, even the initial stage of identifying the keywords, it's not necessary. In general, if a ministry wants to know what is the feedback of its ministry about the users, they can actually take all the posts on their ministry and put topic modeling on top of it to identify basically which topics people are talking about them, right? So that's another interesting way to look at things in this particular part. There is more things that you can do, especially with network analytics, because it's all connected. Where geographically people, if a person in a particular location is posting something, is it being retweeted within the same location or within different geographies, something of interest to the policymaker as well. And again, you can do time series analysis over the period of time. If some changes are being announced by the ministry, again, is it being taken positively or negatively? So you try to do those time series analysis as well as the geospatial analysis on top of your data. Primarily, if we go deep into that again, right, in descriptive, it's all about looking at the graphs, charts, KPIs. You look at the word cloud kind of a thing where you see what's the reaction of the public in general. Then if you talk about more predictive analytics, right, and that's where one of our strengths come into picture is, we provide this workflow-based model where you can actually take your data, apply something like LDA or any kind of NLP you want, and build your own workflow for doing topic modeling or for sentiment analysis. So it's pretty easy, it's a drag and drop. So one of the things I always say is statisticians are good at, as I was saying, right, they are good at applying the algorithms to the data. But the other part they need actually help is scaling that up. How do you basically build something that is web scalable? Because the data you will be dealing with is humongous. It's not a small amount of data to be worked on, which can be worked on a statistician laptop. So you really need that system, those applications, which can help you to do those things. Again, with topic modeling, just to give you a glimpse, right, you can actually look at the different topics which are more interesting to the user and what they are talking about. And in geo-analysis, you can actually do, this is like the Oman chart, which I built to just show that where the sentiment is more positive, where it is negative. So it's a whole area where you do a lot of geo-analysis on top of the data itself. Again, the thing I'll mention is, basically the entire mode, right? It's one thing what we are doing. What we are doing is basically using the social media for the good of, or the internet data for the good of policy making or smart governance. But the way you do it is very important. The steps that you take towards the journeys is something very important. And that's where the entire process of connect, unify, and predict really helps a lot to customers. One of the things that we have done, this is like a very high-level architecture. We were recently working with one of the ministries in Middle East, and this is the kind of platform that we are building with them to basically take all the structured, unstructured social media data, organize it, put it to the analytics, and then presenting through APIs or through analytics to them. So it's really interesting where you basically take that connect, unify, and predict and put it into a platform-based structure so that anyone within the ministry can innovate by themselves and not dependent on always your vendors or your software vendors to do things for you. So this is one of the very extreme use case, right? Because when we talk about ministry, it's also for the social good. It has to be for the benefit of the people, especially who need the most. So one of the things which we worked last year was around the San Francisco city, where we analyzed a lot of the social media comments and then identified that a lot of the fines which are being applied to the end user is from the marginal class, and those cases were presented within the entire department of the municipality, and municipality came up with the reform to basically change those the fine structure so that the marginal class is not impacted much. So it's really the way you take that data and make it use for the good of the general public is very important. And yeah, that's more or less to talk about like basically how many, and this is not like one use case, right? There are many more use cases in one of the tax, like there was a big tax reform in one of the Asian countries, and where basically when the tax reform was announced, there was a lot of positive sentiment, but as soon as the tax went live, it was a lot of chaos because people didn't know what to do with the new tax system. So government was regularly monitoring the feedback, and especially the topics, what people are complaining, whether it is difficult to use the system, the new system that has been rolled out. So they actually made real time, every week they change the system so that they can improve further on it, right? So that's the kind of loop you work in, where you actually roll out something, take the feedback of the of your end users, and basically make meaningful insights from it, and take actions on it as well, right? So that's in general about the session. I think we'll go now on the detailed discussions.
شكرا سيد بارون. والآن مع عرض من عند الأستاذ الدكتور أو الدكتورة أسيل منصور من الهيئة العامة للإحصاء المملكة العربية السعودية. العرض بيكون عبارة عن المؤشرات الإحصائية من بيانات الويب.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أسعد الله مساءكم بكل خير. اليوم راح أستعرض بصورة سريعة تجربة الهيئة العامة للإحصاء في استخدام أحد مصادر البيانات الضخمة، وهي بيانات المواقع الإلكترونية، للبدء في إنتاج مؤشرات إحصائية رسمية، مستهدفين من خلال بيانات مواقع الإلكترونية عرض أو إنتاج مؤشرات إحصاءات عروض العقار. بداية، توفير البيانات أو المنتجات الإحصائية تكون بهدف تلبية للاحتياجات المحلية أو الاحتياجات الدولية. الاحتياجات المحلية تترجم عادة باحتياجات الجهات والجهات الحكومية من الوزارات، الهيئات وغيرها، بالإضافة إلى المتطلبات الدولية على الأجهزة الإحصائية كتغطية لهذه المنتجات، وأيضاً مواكبة لتوفير المنتجات الإحصائية مع مقارنة مع الأجهزة الإحصائية المتقدمة. فكان في زيارة من فريق العمل في الهيئة العامة للإحصاء لأحد المؤتمرات في فجوة البيانات Data Gap Initiative في عام 2019. طبعاً خلال هذا المؤتمر عادة يكون الحديث حول آخر التطورات للدول حول تغطية فجوة البيانات لعدة مواضيع مقسمة. فأحد التوصيات للمراحل القادمة كانت حول أهمية بدء الأجهزة الإحصائية على تغطية إحصاءات العروض العقار من خلال البيانات الضخمة، وذلك للقطاع السكني. طبعاً أهمية تغطية هذه البيانات أو استخدام أو الاستفادة من مصادر البيانات الضخمة لوضع تصور كامل للسوق العقاري، وذلك لدعم متخذي القرار حول هذا القطاع الحيوي وهو قطاع العقار. طبعاً بدأت الهيئة من هذه التوصية الدولية للاستفادة من مصدر بيانات الضخمة وهو بيانات المواقع الإلكترونية في عمل بايلوت لبيانات سعر عروض العقار في الربع الثالث من عام 2019. طبعا كان المقصود بعروض العقار القطاع السكني، والذي يشمل شقق الإيجار، الفلل، بيع وإيجار، وأيضا الأراضي. طبعا يعتبر إنتاج أي منتج إحصائي يتم العمل عليه في الهيئة العامة للإحصاء من خلال دليل إجراءات العمل الإحصائي. طبعا هذا بالنسبة لمصادر البيانات التقليدية. بالنسبة لمصدر يعتبر مصدر جديد كمصدر بيانات الضخمة، أيضا الآن حاليا يتم العمل على جميع التجارب الخاصة بمصادر البيانات من خلال دليل إجراءات العمل الإحصائي، ولكن للبيانات الضخمة. ففي المرحلة الأولى تكون مرحلة النقاش مع المستهدفين أو المستفيدين من هذه البيانات. فجدا مهم في البداية يكون في تنسيق وتعاون مع الجهات المستفيدة، مثل وزارة الإسكان في هذه التجربة، وأيضا هيئة العقار. أهمية التنسيق والتعاون تكون الفائدة منها أولا طرح التصور لهذه التجربة في إصدار المؤشرات الرسمية، أيضا التعاون وتسهيل عملية الوصول للبيانات. فيما يخص بيانات المواقع الإلكترونية، هي تعتبر نوعا ما هي بيانات free of access، فكانت العملية أسهل في الحصول على البيانات، لكن كان هناك دعم من هيئة العقار في تحديد المصادر وفلترتها مع الفريق الفني. من مميزات استخدام بيانات المواقع الإلكترونية، طبعا لأي مصادر بيانات الضخمة أو حتى في المصادر التقليدية هناك مميزات وهناك عيوب، لكن في البداية راح نتكلم بصورة سريعة على مميزات بيانات المواقع الإلكترونية. طبعا من أهم مميزاتها هي إمكانية عرض المؤشرات بصورة شهرية على حسب التوزيع، أيضا إمكانية الحصول على تفاصيل للوحدات العقارية أكثر تفصيلاً من حيث المساحة، عدد الغرف على حسب المناطق الإدارية، المدن وما إلى ذلك. أيضاً إمكانية عرض المؤشرات بصورة لحظية لتقديم الدعم للمستفيدين. بالنسبة لنفس المصدر بيانات المواقع الإلكترونية، طبعاً كان في مجموعة من المواقع الإلكترونية اللي من الممكن سحب البيانات من خلالها وحساب المؤشرات الإحصائية. فكان التعاون بينه وبين هيئة العقار في تحديد أفضل مواقع الإلكترونية اللي يمكن الاعتماد عليها في سحب البيانات، وأيضا حساب المؤشرات الخاصة بعروض العقار. طبعا بداية تم الاعتماد على 3 مواقع إلكترونية، وكان المميزات لاختيار هذه المواقع هو عدد العروض اللي يتم إضافتها في اليوم، بالإضافة إلى تفاصيل للوحدات العقارية والموجودة أو المذكورة في الموقع، بالإضافة يعتبر أساساً ميزة مهمة جداً هي جودة البيانات الموجودة على الموقع الإلكتروني. كحساب للمؤشرات الإحصائية، طبعا من المهم في البداية أن يكون في تعريف واضح للوحدات، يكون في تعريف واضح يمكن على أساسه قياس المؤشر. فتم استخدام التعاريف الموجودة في الهيئة العامة للإحصاء، كونه أنه يوجد already منتجات إحصائية خاصة بالعقار، فتم استخدام نفس التعريف من الوحدة السكنية سواء عقار، شقة، أرض وما إلى ذلك، وتم إضافة تعريف عروض العقار الإلكترونية. كان التصور اللي تم طرحه بالتنسيق مع الجهات المستفيدة أن يكون العمل على بداية في إصدار مؤشرات إحصائية جديدة أو رسمية تمثل عروض العقار في المملكة. المؤشرات الرئيسية كانت عن متوسط أسعار العروض، سواء كانت للأراضي حسب التفاصيل، مثلا حسب المناطق الإدارية أو حسب المدن. بالإضافة كان من أحد المؤشرات حساب متوسط أسعار الفلل، الشقق، سواء حسب المدن حسب المناطق الإدارية. فكان التوزيع أو التفصيل حسب مدى توفر المؤشرات من بيانات الموقع. أيضاً كان في هناك مؤشرات إضافية تم العمل عليها من خلال فريق العمل في وضع مؤشرات توضح نسبة العروض العقارية الموجودة حسب الوحدة على حسب المناطق الإدارية أو المدن ومدى نشاط هذه العروض. أيضاً كان هناك بعض المؤشرات لتوضيح نسبة توزيع الفلل أو الشقق حسب المدن والمناطق الإدارية. فالمرحلة الأولى اللي هي تعتبر المرحلة التجريبية هي عملية سحب البيانات، التأكد من مدى ملائمة هذه البيانات في قياس المؤشرات المعتمدة في المرحلة الأولى. طبعا هي تعتبر تجربة، وهذه التجربة تعدي بعدة مراحل. المرحلة الأولى هي اختبار البيانات التي تم سحبها في المرحلة الأولى من بيانات المواقع، أيضاً العمل على موائمتها مع البيانات الموجودة سواء من من هيئة العقار أو سواء من المنتجات الإحصائية الموجودة في الهيئة. طبعاً بالنسبة للمنتج رقم القياس لأسعار عقار هو يعتبر منتج إحصائي يغطي سلسلة زمنية طويلة، فحتى يتم العمل على المقارنة راح يكون في المرحلة القادمة لهذا المنتج، ذلك بسبب أنه التغطية كانت فقط ل3 أشهر، لكن بعد تكملة سحب البيانات الأشهر القادمة راح يكون في عملية مقارنة بين البيانات اللي يتم إصدارها من المؤشرات أو المصادر الجديدة، وأيضاً مدى موائمتها مع البيانات الصادرة من المصادر التقليدية. التحديات اللي واجهت فريق العمل في سحب البيانات أو في إصدار هذه المؤشرات، طبعاً في تحديات تكون تقنية وراح أنا أتكلم بس عن التحديات بصورة عامة. من أهم هذه التحديات هي قانونية أو شرعية جمع البيانات من هذه المواقع. طبعاً مهم جداً التأكد من استدامة وجود هذه المواقع وإمكانية سحب هذه البيانات لاستخدامها للأغراض الإحصائية. فحالياً يتم التواصل مع بعض المنظمات الدولية وأيضاً مع الجهات المحلية لمناقشة قانونية استخدام هذه البيانات للأغراض الإحصائية. أيضاً من أحد التحديات اللي تم مواجهتها بصورة عامة هي مدى جودة هذه البيانات. بالحديث عن جودة البيانات، طبعاً لأنه هي التجربة كانت فقط لبيانات سلسلة زمنية قصيرة مدة 3 أشهر، فطبعاً نحتاج فترة زمنية أطول لزيادة مراجعة دقة وجودة هذه البيانات. لكن بالعموم كانت الملاحظات في فقد بعض البيانات لبعض الوحدات العقارية، وطبعاً الفريق العمل قام بالتأكد أثناء سحب البيانات أنها تكون البيانات متكاملة لكل وحدة عقارية. أيضاً أهمية أنه فريق العمل يبدأ من الآن في إيجاد الحلول الإحصائية لاستخدام البيانات من المواقع الإلكترونية، وضع الحلول في التأكد من الميسنج داتا استيميشن، كيف يمكن تغطيتها أو كيف يمكن معالجة الأوتلايرز للبيانات اللي يتم سحبها من المواقع. التوصيات بصورة عامة بعد الانتهاء من المرحلة الحالية لهذه التجربة كانت أهمية أن يكون هناك ترخيص حكومي لمواقع العقار الإلكترونية. طبعا هذه من الأشياء المهمة جدا أنها راح تسهل أو أساساً تساعد في أن تكون جودة البيانات أعلى وأكبر. أيضاً من المهم جداً في المراحل القادمة العمل والتركيز على موائمة المنتج من البيانات الضخمة مع المنتجات الصادرة من المصادر الأخرى، حتى يكون هناك في تصور متكامل للسوق العقاري. وأيضا من التوصيات أنه بمشيئة الله راح يتم استكمال العمل على هذه التجربة بسحب البيانات للمواقع الالكترونية، حيث الآن حاليا يتم إضافة موقع إلكتروني إضافي على البيانات، واستكمال هذه السلسلة لفترة زمنية أطول حتى يتم تحليلها ومن بعدها نطلع بالنتائج. شكرا.
شكرا جزيلا دكتورة أسيل. الآن عندنا ورقة بعنوان الخبرات في تجريد الويب للإحصاءات، قدمها السيد توماس من المكتب الإحصائي بسلوفينيا. The floor is yours.
Can I use this one? Is it working? Okay. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I'm Tomáš Pech from Statistics Slovenia. First of all, I would like to thank you, to the organizers, for giving me opportunity to present to this great event and for providing this great hospitality. I work as for Statistics Office for 20 years, and actually I'm head of IT department for production and infrastructure, but I'm involved also in these big data stories for quite a while. So today I'm going to present our experience in web scraping for statistics. Particularly, I will present how we use online job vacancies for producing statistics. In the presentation, I will first give you some general information, then I will present two projects that we are involved in currently. So the first one is our internal project. We are developing our own system for collecting this data. I will touch a bit about data access, data handling, methodology of processing the data, and also producing experimental statistics. And the second project is a European project. It's called ESNet on Big Data, and we are part of this. We participate in the work package on online job vacancies, and we are coordinators of this project, work package, sorry. So at the end, I will conclude with some facts about how this data can be used for producing official statistics. Just a few words on our big data implementation strategy. So we have short-term goal and long-term goal. And in a short-term goal, we would still produce classical statistical survey and use big data sources for improvement of these statistics. And this is also the case for online job vacancies. In the future, we would like to make a shift and use more alternative data sources and perform occasional statistical surveys for quality assessment. Motivation for using online job vacancy data in our office came out 3-4 years ago when we lost our official data source for producing estimates on job vacancies. Our employment agency stopped collecting the data. And at that time, of course, we established our internal web questionnaire for this, and we also tried to find additional data sources. Nowadays, traditional statistics are using usually small, very quality data that are well structured, and they can fulfill the purposes of statistics like coverage of the population, methodology, definition, etc. And this is not the case with the big data sources. There are, of course, some changes, differences, and this is the case for online job vacancies data. But we could conclude that these data are more frequent, more timely, more granular, can provide more informations. They are less burden, and it should be cheaper, but this could be discussed in detail. A few words about data access. So in Slovenia, we are a small country, probably you know. There are two main types of providers, like job portals and job agencies. Search engines are rare, and we discovered that that there are just two important job portals that can provide 95% of all online job vacancies, so we scrapped just those two. And regarding data access, we meet with them and try to sign some permissions or contracts that allow us scrapping. We didn't implement like API access because somehow these portals would then have some costs doing this. So they allow us scraping on a weekly basis. So we perform scraping of enterprise internet domains also. I will describe this later. This is just one example. You can see from the picture what kind of information we scrape from job portals. So these informations are very highly structured. And another example of enterprise internet domain. We prepare in advance, at the moment, this is 8,000 URLs that we scraped afterwards, and when we prepare this list, we take into account and we really want we want to have this list linked to our business register. So basically we know more information about the companies that we then scrap. For data handling, we used to use third-party scrapers, but nowadays we developed in-house software for scraping to difference based on the fact that data from job portals are mostly structured and enterprise data are highly unstructured. So it's a different process, and we use mainly open source tools for analyzing processing like Jupyter's R, Orange Toolkit. Yeah, on this picture you can see how we understand like a general workflow for processing online job vacancy data. I would just like to point out two very important steps, deduplication and linkage with registers. This is important for treatment of our job portals data because you know, when you have multiple data sources, then you face issues of duplicate data, and you need to deduplicate it. And we help. We try to. Well, we help us with linking all the data to the business register to assign company ID to each data, and then we can perform really good deduplication within the particular data source and across sources. Okay, this is just a picture of linkage process. There are 11 steps. We use various combination of variables. We use exact match and approximate match algorithms, and some cases we need manual intervention. Okay, with when we scrape enterprise internet domains, as I said, we prepare in advance the URL list. We crawl for subpages within each domain. We go to the third level and we look for data about job vacancies based on a concept keyword. And when we extract the data, we first do some text mining process in order to standardize the data, to remove noise. And we prepare the data for machine learning, which we actually use for detecting the existence of online job vacancy in the site, and also to predict the number of online job vacancies in particular site. Of course, we do some deduplication also in this case, And what is important, this software is in constant development. We're trying new models for prediction. And when doing prediction, it's really important to link somehow a predicted result with some real result. And our system actually allows us, in case where this is possible, that we actually compare predicted values with values that we acquire with our questionnaire survey. This is just another picture of complete system. So we join all sources scraped, and we still have some data from our employment agency because our government companies are still, public companies are still sending the data. We do then deduplication, which is very successful due to using this company ID, and we can compare different sources, and at the end we estimate the number of online job vacancies. Of course, now that we have some data, we would like to use it for producing statistics. And we produce some experimental statistics. On the left side, you can see some example like available online job vacancies on the reference days, on the reference months, newly posted, and there are some others. What is interesting that we actually found out that this data can be used in several statistical domains or other statistical domains. And on the right side, you can see one graph that actually was produced for other project that is ongoing in our office. It's project from national accounts. They really work on early estimating of some structural components of GDP, and they really found out that online job vacancy data could be used for these purposes. Of course, there are other use cases for this data. We still would like to use it in the field of job vacancy statistics. Unfortunately, we will have to wait to receive some more data because current job vacancy statistics are quarterly published, and we need longer series of data to, for example, do estimates, early estimates of this using online job vacancy data. The second very important use case, we can derive more information from this data. So we are developing at the moment some machine learning algorithm for classifying the data, and there is a lot of opportunity for artificial intelligence and natural language processing in this field. This data actually allows some time series analysis data. 2 minutes. Okay, I'll finish it. It's important, you will see, and now I'll switch to the second project. That is a European project, again on online job vacancy data. So within this project, we got access to really big data set or database of online job vacancies prepared by Agency for Vocational Training in Europe. It's called CEDEFOP. They scrap online job vacancy for complete European Union. They scrap more than 500 job portals and other sources. And if I remember correct, daily snapshot of detected job vacancies is 40,000 millions, something like this. So in the project, the data was available last summer, and during the autumn, we analyzed the data. You can see on the right side, they already pre-process the data and extract and classify quite a few interesting variables for using in official statistics. This is just a comparison of this set of data with official Eurostat estimates. And you can see on the lower picture, there are two suspicious outliers for Ireland and Czechia, and we have to deal a little bit with this. We have to define what is the case for this. Another interesting example, since the data are collected on the same way for each country in Europe, using the same approach, we tested whether there are some correlation with some other statistical variables like population size and GDP, and the regression test showed that there is quite good correlation and that this data actually could be used for predicting or developing flash estimates on economic activities and things like that. Some facts about data. It's over. Okay, so you can read it. I will read it anyway. Conclusions. These data can be used in statistics, but not really easy to use estimates about job vacancies. They are usable to measure trends, but it's really important that when you use this data to validate the results with some other data sources, and that's all from my side. Thank you very much.
So thank you, Thomas. الحين عندنا عرض عن البيانات الدفع الإلكتروني وبطاقة الائتمان تقدمها الأخت لطيفة الشحي من الهيئة الاتحادية التنافسية والإحصاء بالإمارات. تفضلي.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, good afternoon. Today, the tourism sector is contributing. It's one of the most contributed sector of the GDP of the UAE. And I would like to ask, anyone doesn't have a bank account here? Okay, good. So around the world, there is 69% of adults in 2017 that have bank accounts. Now, from 2013 to 2017, there is a 50% increase of non-cashless transactions, so people are not using cash anymore. They're moving to use digital. In 2020, there will be 726 billion transactions that is made using digital systems. So the world is changing today. Do statistical offices want to stay in the yesterday, or should we move to the tomorrow? So in our office, we looked at the tourism sector, and we partnered with an institute who has huge numbers of transactional data. We looked at two portfolios using credit cards and debit cards, and we looked at residents and tourist spend. We also looked at different sectors and how do they spend in those sectors. And we looked at the new trend, which is the digital economy. Now, our objectives was to modernize the statistics and move from traditional methods to smart methods. Data cannot be smart without us using it in smart ways, collecting it in smart ways, analyzing it, and disseminating it in smart ways. In the UAE, we have several challenges. We have we're a federated nation, so we have 7 different emirates. Each emirate has their own statistical office, as well as their own tourism authority. Now, doing surveys and orchestrating the surveys in all of these 7 emirates, it's a challenge for us. The seasonality also, we have different seasons where we have different types of tourists coming. Some like coming in different festivals and sales throughout the year, etc. And surveys are a very high cost. And till we collect the data and analyze it, some data is obsolete. So it's not useful for the decision maker. And there's a huge shift to use admin data and emerging data products. For example, there's a policy in the UAE, 5 years of tourism visa that was launched by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid. They wanted to know what is the impact on the tourism. Does it impact it today or not? So this is our role today in statistics, to give them fast data, not canned data that has been stored throughout the century. Now, this is an example of a survey that's proposed by the UNWTO. It measures expenditure. Some of the questions are, how much did you spend for accommodation, transportation, etc. So thinking of new ways in tourism and trying to look at what can we do with this huge amounts of data. Does any statistical offices know the residents of their country when they travel abroad, how is their spending patterns? No, not today. But we can predict using this data on all of these different sectors. Another example, domestic tourism. On the weekends, for example, I'm from Dubai, we like to go to Ras Al Khaimah and visit family there, and we spend time in coffee shops, etc. But this is not incorporated in the statistical system today. Now, what does our data look like? This is a 3 years analysis of data using transactional data. You can see the difference of spending behavior for tourists and residents. So as we said, high frequency data, there it is, using big data. These are the top countries that spend in the UAE. We have United Kingdom, Saudi Arabia, Australia, Germany, etc. And when we compare the results to what we currently have as visitors coming to the UAE, it's fairly, it can get there. But it shows you what we can do with big data. Now, if you ask me, Latifa, what do they spend on when they come to the UAE? The UK citizens, they spend most on hotels. While in India, they spend most on retail. So here we can see differences in spending patterns of people and visitors who are coming to the UAE. Now, looking at our residents and their comparison to tourists, we can see the increase of use of the credit cards or debit cards today. We can look at it by breaking it down: credit cards, taking loans from the bank using the credit card, or debit card. But we still see there's a lot of people who's taking money from the ATM, which is the Qazi cash here. You can see it. So we can break down the spending based on using debit card, using credit card, sectors, countries, so it's endless. Now, we've heard many talks on the digital economy, the fourth industrial revolution, 3D printing, artificial intelligence. And us as statistical offices, there is a lack of data in this domain. And some of the data is not even, it's affecting our economic indicators, such as the GDP, because we're not calculating it today. People are using online, but it's not calculated in our GDP. So we wanted to improve this matrix. And as you can see, the e-commerce growth has been increasing from 2018 to 19, etc., and it will be growing for the next 10 years. In the UAE, you can fill up your petrol tank with the app Kafu. You can just call them, and they fill up your petrol tank using a mobile app. So this is when we compare indicators internationally with our data, we can see there's a lot of similarities. What we mean here, online and offline, online is using their card transactions using mobile phones or websites. Offline meaning visiting the stores and tapping your credit card or inserting it in the machines. Here also we can see the top 5 online spending by category for our tourists. So most tourists book airlines, regional airlines, which is our methodology. So we grouped the UAE's airlines and the region's airlines in one group to be able to see whether or not the indicators are similar to international airlines. Now, what does this mean? The only way we can move to official statistics using big data is if we collaborate. Now, we'd love to collaborate with other statistical offices and see what insights we can come up with together in enhancing some of our methodologies that we've used and in validating our calculation matrix, etc. The second thing that this data that we have is very crucial for the tourism authorities. Because today we have data that I have not shown in this presentation about domestic tourism. How many people go to Abu Dhabi versus Dubai versus Sharjah, etc. And today we've partnered with one of the credit card providers in the UAE, but our aim is to have the full 100% coverage. In order to replace the old statistics methods to the using of these big data sources, we need to experiment and look at surveys and compare it with our current surveys. So our next step is to create or partner with IMF and UNWTO to see whether or not we can utilize this data, not only in tourism, but also in the digital economy. Thank you so much.
شكرا للأخت لطيفة. والحين معنا عرض من قبل الأخت سيلفيا أو الأستاذة سيلفيا فراستو من المعهد الوطني للإحصاء والجغرافيا بالمكسيك، العرض عن الحالة المزاجية للمغردين على موقع تويتر في المكسيك.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the invitation. I'm going to present what we are doing in the National Statistics Office in Mexico about social media data, particularly Twitter. And I have to run because they tell me I have just 15 minutes. This is a collaborative work between INEGI and some institutions from the academy. Here? Yeah. I divided my presentation in these 5 parts. It's just the process, the benefits, the results, some comparisons with our service with hard data, and what we learned. Let's start with the process. The mood of Twitterers is the convergence of 2 agendas. On one hand, we have that many countries we're trying to measure well-being, and in Mexico we do it through a survey. And in the other hand, we wanted to venture to this big data world and see how it could help us to do better our duty. So we selected Twitter because it is free. We didn't have budget for this project, because it is a public data and it's very difficult to obtain data for big data, and because many of the texts that we post in social networks are full of sentiment. So the general idea was to automatically measure and report the mood of Twitterers through a supervised machine learning method. In a supervised method, you need a training set, in this case, tweets tagged by humans, to teach the machine to learn how to tag new tweets. So what we did is for the collection of the tweets, we use the free API of Twitter, and with a reference filter, we, in real time, are catching all the tweets that are posted in the Mexican territory. Then we store them in a database. For the tagging activity, we develop an application that it's like a game where each tweet is presented one by one, and the user is asked to tag it if it's positive, negative, or neutral. We then ask, this is open source and we can share it with you if you want. Then we ask Tech Milenio University, that has campuses all over the country, to help us with the tagging activity, asking their students to do it through the application. I think they really like it, because we had the participation of more than 5,000 students that help us do this task. After the tagging activity, we had 700,000 tagged tweets, full of repetitions and contradictions. Repetitions because each tweet was tagged more than once, just to assure it was tagged correctly. And we asked them to Infotech and Centro Geo, that are two research institutions of Mexico, to help us cleaning the training set. This is removing repetitions and contradictions, and develop the machine learning classifier for us. In the first link, you can find the paper they wrote, and in the second one, it's the code available in GitHub. If you're interested, it also classifies Arabic. With this final solution, we trained 31 support vector machine models, and we obtained more than 80% of accuracy. In this slide, I tried to summarize all the classification process. In the upper side is the training process I have just described, that you only have to do it once. And in the lower part is the production process that we need for every new tweet, but it's automatically. As I tell you, the new tweets come directly from the API, the Twitter API, and they are stored in a NoSQL database. Then daily at 3 o'clock in the morning, the process automatically reads all the tweets of the day, and it does the normalization and vector representation, and then each tweet goes through each of the 31 models, and the models vote if the tweet is positive or negative, and the machine, by majority, decide if the tweet is positive or negative. Then a positivity ratio is calculated just by dividing the amount of positive tweets into the negative ones by hour, by day, by week, by month, etc. And it's stored in the database, and the Mood of Tutors, the web application, use that database to present the results. It is available in our website, and we can also share with you this application, this code. Then beyond the Mood of Tutors, we had very important benefits. The first one is that we could define a whole process, a big data process, and we could size the infrastructure we needed, not just for this project, but to support new ones, new data science projects. This is, I think, the most important benefit, that with all the new skills we developed, IT and statistical skills, and now several working teams are working in new projects, in new data science projects. Some of the projects these teams are working in is mental health from Twitter, or the gasoline price collection through web scraping for price index, automatic coding of economic activities in censuses. Today it's an open question, and they classify it by hand, and trying to measure the Internet of economy. The most advanced project is the Geographical Data Cube with an Australian software. We have now 36 years of ARED, that's analysis-ready satellite images, and some teams are working, for example, to discover new settlements with this series, and Of course, with machine learning and deep learning, and they are proving to try to measure some of the SDGs index or indicators. Then the results, this is the application. We have more than 4 years of the daily rate, and we can relate some events both on the peaks and on the lowest points. I'm just going to take 2 of them, one from the bottom and one from the peak, just to see what happens. In 2017, in Mexico, we suffered 2 devastating earthquakes, and both in September. In that moment, social networks went crazy, and Twitter did so. Those 2 days, we have the highest collection of the whole year, and of course, the lowest mood of the year. If we look, for example, to these hourly collection patterns, we have on the left side that the first bar is from 12 o'clock to 1 a.m. And we see we collect about 5,000 tweets at midnight. And on the earthquake day, the first one that was some minutes before midnight, in the next hour after the earthquake, we collected about 22,000 tweets instead of 5. Of course, the words clouds were pray for Mexico, Mexico be brave, earthquakes and things like that. And the opposite happened, of course, in the Football World Cup in Russia, when Mexico won against Germany a football match, 1-0. All Mexicans like football. Just look at this pattern. You can guess, of course, the match was between 10 and 12 and 1. In these 3 hours, we collected about 60,000 tweets. And looking at the classification minute by minute, we have that on the minute 35 that was the goal, more than 1,000 tweets and more than, and at the end of the game, another ones, those peaks. We then compare our results with hard data. We knew, for example, that in Netherlands, they are measuring or trying to measure consumer confidence with Twitter. So why we cannot do that? And this is what happened. Look at this. Everything is upside down. While the consumer confidence goes up, mood of Twitterers go down and vice versa. So what happened here? Could the population of our database be not representative of the whole population of Mexico? So we went to another survey, origin destination. This is a mobility survey that goes in Mexico City. And here we have the relative distribution between the 20 most frequent pairs of municipalities by origin destination on the same trip. In the left side, we have the survey distribution, more uniform, and in the right hand, we have the distribution of these same 20 pairs of the tweeters that georeference. So we can clearly see that those long bars are the ones who correspond to a more affluent municipalities. So Could this be evidence of a bias toward a better off population? We went then to the NDUT survey, that is a survey for the use of the technology. And here we have the relative distribution by sex and socioeconomic stratum. We can clearly see here that of three populations. In green one, we have the general population. In blue, the Facebook users, and in red, the Twitter users. We don't have any bias, or apparently any bias, between by sexes, but we clearly see that in the low and in the medium-low status, Twitter is underrepresented, while in the medium-high and high status, Twitter is overrepresented. And seeing these three same populations by age groups, we also can see that people over 40 years are underrepresented, and from 15 to 39 are, are underrepresented. So we are now in the position to reweight or to reweight, but we need to estimate age group, sex, and social economic status. And that's a great challenge that three researchers are working on. This, I can skip it, and just what we learned. It's worthwhile to have a data science strategy. Start with simple for didactic purposes, take advantage of the experience of other countries, but remember each country has its particularities. Compare your big data results with hard data, and now we are using big data as experimental statistics to complement official statistics, but we have faith that in a near future we are going to be using data science to produce some official statistics information. Thank you.
Thank you سيلفيا. نفتح باب النقاش إذا ممكن. الحضور إذا تعرفون بنفسكم والسؤال. ما في أسئلة يا جماعة؟ Please. Yeah.
شكرا على الاستضافة وعلى التنظيم. My question is to everybody, and it's related to this session and the previous session in which we could not ask. My question is, some challenges some of the speakers raised related to the technology. And I think maybe the technology now related to the new data sources is not the main challenge that all of us we have. Maybe I think the main challenge here is the alignment between the business, which is the methodology, and the technology. My question now is, considering that one of the main aspects of each statistical product is the comparability, to have a comparable statistical indicators and statistical products. How can the NSOs work together to produce new methodologies, that these methodologies can produce comparable indicators and comparable statistical products that we can depend as national statistical indicators? Thank you.
Thank you sir. في سؤال ثاني كذلك؟ أظن الطاولة اللي ورا كان فيها سؤال. Yeah.
Sukron, I would like to ask about the using of credit card data. How do you get the data? Which source that you use? Thank you very much.
في أحد ثاني عنده سؤال؟ زين، أنا عندي سؤال للدكتورة أسيل فيما يخص العرض اللي أكثر من رائع والتجربة الممتازة صراحة. بس عندي استفسار، يعني بما أن احنا حاليا في موسم تعداد أو دورة تعداد، فليش ما يتم استخدام هذه الوسائل أو هذه المواقع لاستخراج بيانات خاصة بالمباني والمساكن، لكن هي عبارة عن خصائص المساكن مش بس للأسعار؟ سؤالي. وإذا if we can answer the other questions regarding the comparability of the new methodology for producing data and the credit card.
For the question on credit card data?
Or anything, the other one, which is the comparability of the new methodologies to produce data. Or perhaps the national statistics would like to answer.
فيما يخص استخدام البيج داتا للتعداد، هو طبعا يعتبر مصدر جديد، والتعدادات لها طرق معينة ومنهجية معينة في سحب البيانات، والمرحلة الحالية هي المرحلة للانتقال من الأسلوب التقليدي بالسيرفي لأسلوب السجلات الإدارية، فهي من مرحلة لمرحلة للانتقال للمرحلة المتقدمة في استخدام البيانات الضخمة. لكن التوجه الآن حالياً بالاستفادة من السجلات الإدارية في تكملة الأسئلة اللي لها إجابات متوفرة من خلال السجلات. فيما يخص سؤال الزميل حول كيف يمكن تعاون المكاتب الإحصائية لإصدار هذه المؤشرات أو استخدام هذا المصدر، مصادر البيانات الضخمة، الآن حالياً يعتبر هو الوقت المناسب للأجهزة الإحصائية بأن تعمل بعدم استحياء العمل كإحصائيين بقوة حول وضع المنهجيات الصحيحة لكل مصدر من المصادر، التعاون بين الأجهزة الإحصائية وأيضاً بعض المنظمات الدولية في وضع المنهجية المناسبة لقياس مؤشرات معينة من المصدر. فمن هذا المنطلق يسهل العمل على الجميع في كيفية حساب المؤشرات. وانس المنهجية يتم اعتمادها، يسهل على الجميع قياس هذه المؤشرات أو إضافة بعض المؤشرات. فشخصياً أنا أشوف حالياً التوجه في وضع المنهجية المناسبة اللي معظم الدول يمكن تطبيقها في قياس المؤشرات الإحصائية لمجال معين.
You asked about the data providers, Doctor. I cannot disclose this information because it's confidential, but I can see that we've collaborated with one of the big five, which is Visa, MasterCard, etc., American Express, to create this statistics. As you know, there's a huge shift and moving data from the government offices. Now the private sector is owning many insights on big data, not only in the UAE, but also in the GCC and around the world. So we're trying to utilize using these transactional data in official statistics. And there's a question about how do we align strategies, etc. It's not of replacing. Sometimes, yes, we want to replace some of the indicators using big data sources, but we also have to keep the mindset of creating new data sources, new data products, rather than always trying to replace. Because we see, and the government of the UAE is pushing a lot to think of new ways on how do we use private sector data, how do you use sensor data, Internet of Things, and this is needed, I'd say, for the next future. There's another point about how government offices should collaborate. I think Sylvia and I are a part of the UN Global Working Group on Big Data. So if there's anyone interested in joining and building collaborative methods, we have meetings weekly in the UAE time, like at 7. So we can collaborate using these different networks of institutes. Thank you.
Yeah, just like to add on that credit card data, right? Basically, I see in some organizations what they are trying to do is they are trying to tie up with many retailers, specifically for the online part of it, not the physical part, but the credit card transactions on online. If you like, if an organization is tying up with big other organizations, the big retailers, there's a lot of important information that gets generated from there, and I've seen people using it. Depending on the sample size and other things. So, but that is also another avenue apart from payment processing companies and other ways.
إذا ما في أي سؤال ممكن نختم الجلسة لأن الوقت بعد. أوكي. في سؤال. المايك مش شغال هناك.
Okay. Okay, most of your speakers, they say it is the figures and tables not anymore used. There's a new way of to present the data. For me, I am old a generation statistician. I learned the statistics with this all figures, tables, and also I taught statistics. But really what I say, I didn't see a new way of presenting the data. Most of you use bars, pie chart, lines. So where is the new way of presenting the data? I couldn't see a new way. With all the speakers, what they present all this way of bar chart, as I say, the old way of presenting the data. I don't know, I would like to your comments. Thank you.
Yes, maybe for the presentation's sake, and if you'd like, we'd show you some demos that we've done. Disseminating or visualizing data, there are many ways now. We hear about augmented analytics, where you can use the mobile phone to look at different data. There's also virtual reality, and there's proof of concepts of using VR for disseminating the data. So it's not about people in statistics should do it alone. No, we have to have a team. The team has to have many different skills. BI expert, data scientist, data engineer, and the domain expert is key, the statisticians who have that background to help us provide new ways and new tools. And there's a huge disruption in the BI market. Today we hear of new tools called ThoughtSpot, who you don't need to have any background of programming or using R or Python in order to create tables or create some insights. The tool will do it for you. So we see the trend moving, and we have to start changing and collaborating with these private sectors in order to, at the end, our main goal is to serve our decision makers. And if they move away from using statistics and moving away and getting data from private sector, we're in trouble. So just room for thought.
Any more comments?
أنا عندي تعليق بسيط. هو الهدف so far it's not about how we are presenting the big data as much as to show that we could use this new source of data as big data, and it is statistically correct to be used at the national statistical offices. How to present it? There are a lot of more innovative way of presenting the data, but the main objective right now is to make sure that this source of data, it could be used by the national statistical offices or by the other sectors.
يبدو لي خلاص نختم الجلسة. في النهاية حابين نشكر الأخوة على عرضهم جدا أكثر من رائع يعني، ويعطيكم العافية.
شكرا لمديرة الجلسة الثانية، وكذلك شكرا للمتحدثين والمتحدثات في هذه الجلسة. ويسرنا في هذه اللحظات دعوة الأستاذة سوسن بن داود اللواتية مدير عام المعلومات بالمركز الوطني للإحصاء والمعلومات لتكريم مديرة الجلسة وكذلك المتحدثين. طبعا هذه هي الجلسة الثانية، بيانات التواصل الاجتماعي والمواقع الالكترونية، ومديرة الجلسة الفاضلة مها عبد الله السبت، القائم بأعمال مدير الإحصاءات السكانية والديموغرافية بهيئة المعلومات والحكومة الإلكترونية بمملكة البحرين. شكرا جزيلا. الأستاذ فارون خان بلوال، شركة بهوان سايبرتك الإمارات. توماز، المكتب الإحصائي بسلوفينيا. لطيفة الشحية من الهيئة الاتحادية للتنافسية والإحصاء بدولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة. الدكتورة أسيل المنصور من الهيئة العامة للإحصاء بالمملكة العربية السعودية. سيلفيا فراستو من المعهد الوطني للإحصاء والجغرافيا بالمكسيك. شكرا جزيلا للأستاذة سوسن، وشكرا لمديرة الجلسة والمتحدثين في هذه الجلسة. بهذا تنتهي الجلسات لهذا اليوم في اليوم الأول من المنتدى. طبعا نذكر بأنه المعرض المصاحب للمنتدى سيستمر إن شاء الله إلى 6 مساء، بإمكانكم زيارته، وأيضا دعوة ما تشاءون لزيارة المعرض. غدا هناك 3 جلسات إن شاء الله تنطلق عند 9 صباحا. نتمنى لكم مساء سعيدا. شكرا جزيلا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.